After completing the readings last week, you should have a better understanding of some of the programming principles in Xcode. And this week, we're basically going to review some of those and add some new ones, as well as talking about how to integrate those things from your playgrounds into your Xcode project. So I'm just going to add some of those UI elements we talked about last week, such as the switch. And I'm going to drop the switch in the middle of my scene, and then I'll also add a label just for something to look at. So with this switch, I want to give you the tools where you can actually look up these elements on your own and figure out how to use them. And most of that's done through the quick help on the right hand side. So in the inspector, I just go to the quick help and I have that element selected. So if I don't, no quick help will show up, but once I select it, I suddenly get quick help and it'll give me some information. This is actually not the right one, so let me click it one more time. There we go. So now it's on UI switch. So I have the switch selected. I'm just going to hit open in developer documentation. Make sure you're on Swift and not Objective-C. So I'm going to click on Swift. And if I scroll down, I can see some of the different properties that we can access of this UI switch. So one of those is the variable called isOn, and this is a Boolean. So we could say isOn equals true. If it's true, then do this, or if it's false, do this. And then we also have a function called setOn, and that function takes some arguments. So the setOn has an argument that says, is it on or off, so true or false, and is it animated, true or false. So let's go back. So I'm going to use this isOn in my project. So I'm going to switch back to my project. I'm going to open up the assistant editor, and within this I'm going to drag this into my code as an outlet. And I'll call it switch outlet. And that's because I'm actually accessing a property of that switch, right? I'm not just wondering, if it's been tapped. I'm actually wondering what the current state of the switch is. So I need to export it as an outlet. Let's also do this label. Same thing with the label. So this will be label outlet. And then lastly, let's pull the switch in as an action as well. So I'll call this action switch pressed. And we can have a bunch of different types and yada, yada, yada. So I'll hit connect and I have a function here. So every time this is pressed, something's going to happen. So let's just test this to begin with. So we'll do, let's do label outlet.text equals pressed. So every time it's pressed, it's going to say that. I'll quickly run my application. And it says pressed. So it just says the same thing no matter what, every time we hit this. So back in here, what we want to do is actually detect the current state of that switch outlet. So I'm going to type in switch outlet, and remember I had looked up that isOn in the developer documentation. So I know that that's what I want to check is the isOn. Let's go back in here. So switch outlet.isOn equals true. So we're writing a little if statement here. And if you don't remember if statements, we'll be getting them in a future video this week. It's in that, and let's say label outlet.text equals is on. All right, and we'll say else, and I'll just write it out completely so that it's easy to see. We don't technically need to write all of that, but that's fine. All right, and let's make this label just a little bit bigger so that we can actually read that. So what I have is just a really basic function. It's going to be switching back and forth. So every time I press it, it's going to detect, is it on? True, then change the label to is on. If it's off, change it to is off. So it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, and back and forth. While we're in here, so this is basically what I'm showing you is how to add elements and then look at their quick help and decipher what you can use that quick help for. While we're in this subject, let's talk about running things at the start. So notice whenever I start this application, by default my label just says label, and it won't change until I actually hit this. and then it changes. Let's say we wanted this label to programmatically change when the view loads. There's this function called viewDidLoad up here that I can just add a little line to. So I'll add a line that says labelOutlet.text equals, and let's say is on. So it's going to do that one time when the view loads, meaning at the very beginning of our application. So we shouldn't even see label. Yep, it just jumps to is on, and now we can switch it back and forth again. Just something to keep in mind how this viewDidLoad function works. Anyways, that basically covers how you would go about researching what these different UI elements did. So in the last week we talked about sliders, we talked about all these different things. Look at the sliders, click on them, and make sure you click them enough times to actually get the right declaration over here. And then check out, how to actually program with this, how to use this in your code, and then write a simple little piece of code like this where it just switches something on and off, or changes a label, or changes a color, and that'll help you learn what the actual technique is for using these different elements.